Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to Brick Rigs, and I'm going to be following up with the first demonstration of my space vehicles with my second demonstration of space vehicles, and this is going to be taking place in space for the most part, because these are no longer things that either take off from Earth or travel around on an orbital body, or a celestial body rather. No, these are going to be fully space-orientated things like probes and all that. So I'll start off with the first thing. And of course the first thing I've got for you is the Hubble Space Telescope. As you can see, the solar arrays here can be moved up and down, or well, angled rather, to better hit the sun, which is up there currently. And yeah, it's the good old Hubble Space Telescope. It's got the two dishes, top and bottom here. It's got the rear section, which I think these are like flaps of some sort. I don't know what all of the equipment does on the space telescope. All I know is it's basically a giant telescope. And a couple of years after launch, something had gone wrong on it, so they had to send up a space shuttle to go rescue it. Or rather to go fix it, which was quite funny. But yeah, otherwise, space telescope. There's not much you can do, however I have mounted a camera in the front of it. So yeah, you can proper zoom in on these very blurry stars in the background. Otherwise, yeah, you do sit in it, but obviously it is an unmanned telescope. There's the internal workings for getting these bits to look proper, and of course you can also lower the cover of the telescope for whatever reason they close the telescope for. And then after it gets to its full place down, I think you can still see through it, because yep, there you go. Because it's just a massive scalable brick. Lots of these things are scalable bricks to save on brick count. But yeah, so there you go. You can cover and uncover the lens of the Hubble. But yeah, so there you go. Hubble Space Telescope. Not much else you can do with it, but hey, it's a cool thing. People seem to like it, and I'm fine with that. So let's move on to the next thing. And our next famous thing is of course going to be Voyager. Both of the Voyager probes are pretty much the same thing, Voyager 1 or Voyager 2, so you can decide amongst yourselves whether you want this to be Voyager 1 or Voyager 2. But yeah, this is a good old Voyager, one of the most famous space objects. Currently travelling out of the universe, or well, rather out of the solar system, at 17 kilometers a second, making it the fastest space probe. Yeah, it's crazy to think that this thing, launched in 1977, is travelling through interstellar space at 17 kilometers a second. Space is scary and amazing. And yeah, the numbers to do with these space objects are crazy. But anyway, so yeah, Voyager. I tried my best to try and make Voyager here. So of course we've got the big dish up the front. We've got the various instrument aerials poking out of the various bits of it. It does have two cameras. I don't know whether these cameras are in the correct place or not, but there you go. I've at least got cameras if you wanted to camera it up. Yeah, there you go. So there's the top camera, and the bottom camera is... oh no, sorry, this is the bottom camera, and then the top camera's up here. But yeah, other than that, you've got some various other systems. You've got this thing. Again, I don't know what all of the systems are on the Voyager probes. I don't know everything about everything that has ever been shot into space. Please forgive me for that. But yeah, I tried my best from looking at pictures and whatnot, and the descriptions on Wikipedia and NASA as to how best to replicate this thing. But yeah, so there you go, Voyager. Again, you can't do much with it, but it looks cool, and you could probably put it with a space shuttle, which I have made. By the way, it won't be appearing in this video, but I have made a space shuttle. But yeah, so there you go, Voyager, and we'll move on to the next evolution of Voyager. And the next evolution is New Horizons, which is the fifth and most recent probe to have gone into interstellar space. but it's not travelling as fast as Voyager 1, though. But still, it's pretty cool that it's managed to get into interstellar space. But yeah, so New Horizons then. It's a different design from Voyager, as you can tell, but it still does have a large central dish, so of course I just copy and pasted the Voyager central dish. I basically took Voyager, stripped it of everything except for the dish, and then built onto the dish, because I wasn't making this thing again. Yeah, I wasn't going to try making that, but I did try to add all the detail that I could, as per usual. Again, I don't know all of the systems on this thing, but I do know that it's transmitting lots and lots of lovely data about interstellar gases and nebulas and all that outside of our solar system back to us on Earth, which is very useful. It's got down here these two black nibs. Those are, I believe, those are just small RCSs. I think it's RCS, and they're just thrusters, like orbital thrusters, just to adjust it, adjust it in small increments, like you use in Kerbal Space Program. That's the easiest way of saying it that will hit for most people who have played Kerbal Space Program. But yeah, so I've tried to make the structure on top as well, which is a funny. I think this is another aerial mast. Actually, it's just a different design. But yeah, so there you go. New Horizons. Again, not much to say about this. Like Voyager, you can't control it. There are no controls. It is an unmanned space probe. Obviously, to spawn it, I just hid the seat inside of it. But there you go. There's New Horizons. So the fourth thing I'm going to be showing here is Skylab, and up to this point, it's the biggest space thing that I've built. So far that you've seen. Bigger things are coming that I have made. Spoilers. But yeah, Skylab. It was the first American space station, which eventually was controlled, deorbited, and broke itself apart. But still, it's pretty cool. You've got the two internal areas. I haven't actually added any detail in here, as you can see. I have no idea what goes inside of these things, so without just putting loads of random computery, sciencey looking stuff, I don't know what to put in here. But yeah, it was separated. You had the living area was up here, and then it would be cut off again, and then you'd have the area in here, which is I think where the ships would dock to let people in and out. And then in here is the actual sciencey experiments that would be going on in Skylab. And then, yeah, you've got the solar arrays up here, sort of cross, almost helicopter-like area, which had a dish in the centre, and I'm very pleased with how this dish came out. It took a lot of bricks. It was a lot of pieces to make this dish, but it is definitely a dish shape. It's a bit oversaturated because of the blinding sun, but it is actually a proper dish shape, and it's the best way to make a dish shape in brick rigs until dishes are actually added. But it is very brick heavy though, which is the problem. And it's all held on with this array of various bits of was it just generally structural supports, I suppose is the best way to say it. And of course it did have the one solar panel array sticking out the side of it, which here you can adjust up, down, left, right. Well, just up, down really. It travels in a 360 degree, but it does sort of clip through that solar dish right there. But still, you can, or rather that solar array. But still, you can adjust it and make it point the sun for when you need that extra burst of solar energy for making that all of that delicious electricity. But yes, there you go. Skylab is my biggest project thus far, and it did have a couple of complications, but generally using the aircraft fuselage pieces, I was able to make a decent sized interior here, and it's what I've used for all of the interiors since then for bigger space projects. But yes, there was Skylab. And the next thing I have to show you is another famous item, which is the Apollo Command and Service Module, or CSM, aka the thing that's at the top of the Saturn V, which takes the astronauts to the moon. For actually landing on the moon, you would have the Lunar module on here, which would be the big thing which would actually land on the moon. So once they're in orbit around the moon, the lander would be disconnected and land on the moon, and this thing would stay floating around waiting for the astronauts to come back up and get in and fly away again. So you've got the orbital maneuvering thrusters on the side, 1, 2, 3, 4 sets. You've got a United States plaque right there. Now again, for making dishes and making anything that is pointed but has a flat end, aka things like the Apollo upper module, is very, very tricky, purely because there is nothing like this in the game thus far. You can't use the scalable cones, because the scalable cones are pointy, such as what I've used here for the rocket. As you can see, the point is very pointy, and when you get to the bigger sizes, unless you want it to be a very flat point, very flat cone, you can't really use it to make a flattened end like this. So you have to make your own, and there are multiple ways of doing it, and not all of them come out successfully. This, I would have to say, is kind of one of those times, because it hasn't exactly come out correctly. At this point, I still hadn't figured out a way of making these proper cone shapes, and I still don't know how to make the proper cone shapes, but this is the best I could do. It's got like a little window here. You've got the doorway, which is right there. Maybe if I turn it around, that's too much. Come on, face the sun. There you go. So yeah, this area here, this dark black area, is meant to be the door for getting in and out, and yeah, that's it. There's just 2 windows, one either side. You've got the main rocket at the bottom, which does fire, as you can see, although of course we're in the space map, so as soon as you do that you start floating away very quickly. Inside you've got a lot of instruments. I just tried to make it look sciencey by basically just adding loads and loads of dials and hoping that people are overwhelmed by the amount of dials. You've got a what is it? See-through column, which basically just holds up that whole area, because otherwise it won't sit properly. So that's what that does. As you can see, you are sort of upside down a bit, but that's kind of how they were anyway. They were at a slant. You can't disconnect it or anything. There is no middle mouse things. You can only use a throttle to boost yourself up and down. Off we go, as you can see. Obviously, travelling in space, you're not going to slow down. The orbital manoeuvring things don't actually fire, because there's nothing that small that would be able to bring us around. Of course, if you were to put loads of rockets inside of it, it would probably work, but I just didn't want, and I still don't want to try and engineer that around. So we're leaving it with this. But yeah, I'm trying to make it as close as I could to a proper Apollo orbiting module. So there you go. So the next item I have here to show you is, again, not that easy to see, but it is again one of the most famous objects of the space race. This is Sputnik. Sputnik I, the first successful satellite, and it was Russian, because the Russians were winning the space race for the most part until Apollo went ahead and landed on the moon and said, "Beat that, Soviets." But apart from that minor detail, the Sputnik was the first successful satellite to be launched into space, and it operated for, like, I don't know, couple of weeks or a couple of months, and then it fell back into Earth again. But it still proved that the Soviets could launch a successful satellite into space when the Americans couldn't. The satellite itself, pretty nice. Pretty nice to look at. The actual thing itself is basically just a sphere with like 4 little aerials sticking out of it, and so that's what I've done here. The aerials were a bit tricky, especially getting them on their side like this to look proper, but now that it's all connected and everything, and it spawns perfectly fine, as you can see, it is just a lovely little ball. As you can see, nothing inside of it. It's only 35 pieces, there's not much to say about it. I tried to make it as close to it as I could, and really there's not much to Sputnik. So once I'd figured out how to get the aerials at the proper angle, that was that, really. Nothing much more to do. So yeah, there's Sputnik. So the second to last thing that I have to show you here is the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, the LRO, I believe it is. Yeah, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and this thing is currently in orbit around the moon, and it's basically just surveying the moon, checking for new places that we could potentially land people at, etc, etc. So yeah, robot probe, you don't sit in it, you don't go anywhere near it. It is remote control. There is a remote actually inside of here. Is that thing sticking up right here? Is it? I don't know, it's in here somewhere. I don't know where I've put it. But yeah, so you can... Oh, there you go. So yeah, you can adjust the solar panels up and down. As you can see, the solar panels are only on one side, but they do have a nice reflect to them. You've got all the equipment everywhere, all around. You've got the camera underneath, which would be pointing down at the lunar surface, down here somewhere. You've got a dish to send information back to Earth. You've got a couple of manoeuvring thrusters on the side, and you've generally just got equipment all around. Again, I don't know what all the equipment does. I'm not NASA. I just make these things in a Lego game. But yeah, so there you go, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Again, not much to say about it. It's still in orbit around the moon, and probably will continue to be for many years. The solar panels were a bit tricky to do because there is a small gap in between each layer of panel, so I had to try and make that sort of half stud wide gap, which was a bit of an engineering problem, but I did manage to eventually figure out a way using a couple of various redirector pieces. But other than that though, yeah, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. And now I will show you the final item of the video. So this thing that we have here is the last thing that I'm going to be showing you, other than the moon surface. The moon surface here is just a small version of the surface I showed in the last video. This came first, but then I realised that it was a bit small for actually driving around rovers, and for taking screenshots of the rovers. There just wasn't really enough room to hide the fact that you have this big space around it. So I just made a bigger version of it, which is what you saw in the last video, because it's more impressive. This one, however, it is smaller, so I might as well show it during this video. But we're going to be looking at this thing. This is the Surveyor, part of the Surveyor project, where they basically shot a bunch of these at the moon, and they would land and they would survey the surrounding area. So you've got the twin solar array up top there, you've got some various equipment everywhere. This thing was an engineering nightmare as well, because it is very bare bones in structure. It is a lot of pipes and various other just skeleton-like structures, which I've had to try and do as best I could using clear, scalable bricks, and a variety of the cones and various other bits and pieces, which I think has come out decently at the end of it. You've got this thing here is an aerial, I do believe. You've got the legs, which have got these. I think these are like the pneumatic bits for basically suspension, which is why they're in chrome, whilst these bits, such as the legs and feet, are all in white. So yeah, you've got the main array up top. You also have got a camera, which you can control, if we sit down here, which you can control using Alt and mouse look around, up, down, left, right, and you can basically just turn that around as you want. There are also these spherical chrome balls, and I don't know what they are doing, but they're in there anyway, so I've just sort of added them inside of the mess of see-through parts that actually make up the majority, and mostly actually the structural integrity of this thing. If I took away all of these see-through bricks, all you'd have is a jumble of just a jumble of various bits and pieces, which would all just start floating away on the lunar surface. So yeah, they're sort of necessary. And overall, I wasn't too sure about how this would come out for the entirety that I was building it, but then once I actually finished building it, I realised actually it's not that bad. Honestly, it's come out decently enough. I couldn't really ask for much more than this, to be honest, and I think it's not too bad at the end of the day. However, as you can see up there, I've still got the Lunar Orbiter up there. So if we were to come up here, and I'm to sit in here, then there you go. We can actually use the camera, and we can look down on the orbiting moon surface, and you can kind of move it up and down by basically just moving the solar array. Because the because in space, obviously, every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. Anyway, that's just a law of physics. Every time, as you move the solar array, the actual body of the orbiter actually moves as well. So you can kind of just zoom in, and then you could like slowly pan like that if you wanted to over the surface of the moon. Also, as you can see there, I do have another statue of the fallen astronaut. That was originally on the big. That was originally on the large diagram, I suppose you could sort of say, basically just on the large map of the moon. But I decided to add it into the small map as well, just because I thought it was important to honour these people that died for, well, so that we know what we do now about space, and so that we can have the ISS and know about the shuttle program and know all about these bodies in and out of our solar system, which without these people would not be possible. But yeah, so there you go. That's all of my. That's the next 9 space things, including the map. So yeah, next video I will go over the further 9 items that I've made so far. But yeah, so there you go. I'll thank you for watching, and goodbye.